many years ago, they're in California.
Stuart and Linda
Resnick. They decide to get into the nut business. Almonds and pistachios mostly.
Do you know what they were in before?
All kinds of stuff. Teleflora.
Oh,
Very
yeah,
interesting couple.
That's right. That's right.
And their insight with Teleflora was that people would pay more if you gave a little keepsake. So like a vase or a teddy bear is a vase or something like that.
Okay.
And anyway, became very successful. I think they were already been successful doing some other things, but they're serial entrepreneurs. Got into the nut business. As a byproduct, they had these shrubs that were shielding the wind from their almond. I don't know if it's the almonds or pistachios or both, but they were pomegranates. And pomegranates, very difficult to harvest the fruit inside. There's a lot of pith. And so the pomegranates were not being used very well. Sometimes they would just, throw them away or let them rot on the ground. And so Linda said, what if we sold the pomegranates? And then said, I wonder, this is, in ancient history, people would eat the pomegranates. Maybe they're good for you. And so they did some science around, is this good for you? They funded some of the research. And lo and behold, their study suggested there were some health benefits. And so they then created juice in their what became kind of iconic little bottle with the bumps on it.
POM.
Yeah. Called it POM. Their company was Wonderful, so they called it POM Wonderful. And we'll do a few more wrinkles of the story, but basically that throwaway shield crop that was protecting the wind from their nuts or their pistachios and almonds became the thing that made them the most money, selling this pomegranate juice as not just another juice to compete with apple juice or orange juice, but as a health drink.
Well, and I think that's the key part of that story is it was very intentional. Like that there was a decision point there. We can either sell it like orange juice and
it's another juice.
It's just another juice and we're kind of locked into what the competitors are doing.
Yeah.
Or we can find a way to make it a little bit different.
Yeah. We're not going to let this become another juice, another fruit juice. We're not going to sell it in a carton and like a milk jug deal. We are going to sell it in this expensive, quality
beautiful,
looking,
like high end looking.
It's not
almost
wine,
like a vase,
but like a expensive alcohol kind of a small it's like a decanter, right? Yeah. It's got the big bump on the bottom and the small bump on the top. It's iconic little bottles that they have. And we're not going to allow the supermarkets, we're going to try to, initially it was persuasion so that the supermarkets wouldn't put them in with the juices, but over with the health food or over in the deli case with the expensive meats and cheeses. So we do not want any juice around us. We want to be all on our own in your expensive deli case. And they were able to convince some of their early, not suppliers, the early places that were selling the juice. And then once they got a little bit of prestige, then that it was a demand. You cannot put us with juice. It has to be over here. It's only sold in this bottle. It's not sold in any other way. And as you mentioned, it's a great example of not allowing, when you can do it, not allowing yourself to be compared to anything that's easy or commoditized comparison.
Well, I think so. This often is talked about because of the marketing aspect of it, but it has a management bend to it because it's strategic planning and it's decision making. And so from my standpoint, what I like about the story is instead of doing the SWOT analysis and focusing on competition and what the competitors are doing, which the obvious competitor is the other juices.
Right.
She was like, how do I make this not a commodity? And in many respects, she sort of jumped tracks to the history of soda. The history of soda was a bunch of snake oil salesmen selling soda, like Moxie was one of the original ones that had
Moxie.
It was supposed to be a health drink.
And this is before Coca-Cola?
Yeah, it's before Coca-Cola, but I don't know how much before.
Huh.
So it was marketed as a health drink. Obviously, that's hysterical because we know that soda isn't a health drink
Now.
But like it became mainstream that way. It was a health drink. It got into people's hands and then became a mainstream drink. Now they had to make it taste a whole hell of a lot better than Moxie. Sorry, you Moxie drinkers again. But she basically was like, let's go the health route. But instead of just being a marketer, which I think a lot of people just minimize the story down to that.
Right, there was a marketing move.
That it was just a marketing move. So first of all, she jumped away from her competitors. Like has a fruit and she's like possibly, we don't know, possibly she's thinking about soda, the history of soda. But she basically makes a decision to actually pay for the science to legitimately try to legitimately make a health claim on it.
Yeah.
And so there's that. But in any case, she's still a decision-making example because what do we do when we usually are making a decision? We look in our immediate environments to find something that is the most similar to us and see what we can adopt because we're basically trying to get around uncertainty. And so as a result, we're usually doing like SWOT analysis or some variety of that where we're Porter's 5 forces, something along those lines where we're thinking about our immediate environment and specifically our competitors, because our competitors are the most similar to us. If they weren't similar to us, we wouldn't be competing. And that's where we get a solution. We look at what they're doing. Maybe we make an adaptation, but basically we're kind of locked in cognitively to what the industry and especially our immediate competitors are doing. And then we grab onto that, and we grab onto it because we're actually reducing uncertainty. But there's merit in forcing yourself to go further out, to either identify the problem that you're trying to solve and then look at other industries and how they solve that problem and see what you can bring back. Or in what I'm suggesting, but do not know, in this case, maybe looking at historically how a new category was created.
Yeah. I mean, this is the Peter Thiel 0 to 1, where he says basically don't just incrementally make something a little better.
It's also blue ocean. It's a whole it's all sorts of research on decision making and cognitive limitations. But the point is that like because we don't like uncertainty, we immediately grab the things from our immediate environment. So either the things
maybe too narrow,
which is often too narrow. So like first round, what have we done historically?
Right.
Second round, what are our competitors doing, or what did they do historically, and what's the industry standards? And there's merit in that. There's opportunity in that, but it doesn't make people go far enough because of the uncertainty.
Yes, it's also, we talk about strategy, we talk about some of the books by Richard Rummelt, and he talks about thinking in analogy.
Yeah, where if you actually boil it down to a problem that you're trying to solve, you could take that analogy and go very, very far. So an analogy doesn't have to be close in.
Right. Yeah, that's what Linda Resnick did. She, instead of having the analogy be, we have another fruit juice, her analogy was, we have a novel health drink. And that, or whatever, we have something more like an elixir and less like another cranberry apple. Because cranberry, now that is a excellent example because the color is the same. It's a not that well-known fruit, right? I mean, so she could have gone that more narrow path.
Or pulled from like 1,000 different things that they've done in the past. Like if you look at just what you mentioned that they did the telefloral, like how might that have informed what they did? You know, they could have, I don't know.
Well, I think there's a chance that from the inside of Teleflora, which is that people will pay a lot more if they get a little teddy bear vase, or if they get the vases were one of the big things, but it was more than that. They would put it in like a little tractor.
Right. They dressed it up.
Yeah.
The lesson learned from that presumably is the bottle.
Yes.
Like taking something that's a juice and like how do you make it actually high end?
Yeah.
Like if you're going to create
it needs to be different.
A new category.
Yeah.
It has to
helps.
look different.
Right. That's right. Yeah. I can't expect people to not think it's a juice if it looks like a juice in a container.
And is stored near the juices.
And so let's make this 2 bulb, little bulb, big bulb, little bulb with the top. And let's make that and it doesn't look like anything. Nothing looks like that. And that became, I think, an important part of her first set of insights. I mean, it's a great example because they were not in the pomegranate business. They were in the nut business. Mm-hmm. And these were windbreaks. And she saw a possibility in the windbreak and then was smart enough to not just, we'll make a little bit of money selling juice. Let's try to make a ton of money selling a health drink. And from that initial, you talk about decisions. I mean, decisions are like a fork in the road, especially strategic ones. And then once you decide juice or health drink, every step after that takes you further and further away. And so once she'd made that initial decision, it's going to be a health drink, then let's get the science behind it. Let's get it in a different place. Let's put it in a different container. It becomes more and more unlike cranberry juice or orange juice or apple juice.
Sure. So I think the management lesson is we stop too soon.
Yeah, for sure.
We're very, as soon as we hate uncertainty, we hate it. And so the second that we feel like we know the
plausible
path,
theory.
Yeah, we basically clamp onto it. And look at all the disasters that have happened because of that. I mean, for a very long time, Southwest was a very different airline.
The seating is different.
Everything, like the baggage was different. The seating was different.
The seating is
Their
different.
attitude about you being able to change around your tickets at the time was different. The food was different. I mean, they're the ones who really pioneered the snack instead of the meal.
The drinks. Earlier on, they were very liberal about giving out the alcohol.
They basically were very customer friendly versus their competitors. And there were many airlines who saw them taking the market share, and they tried. They tried to do a Southwest version, and because they looked at their competitors and they were like, Southwest was their competitor, and they're like, okay, they're succeeding with this. We're going to try it. And it didn't work because there's actually a lot more that goes into making something work than just, we're now going to be a discount airline. You have to have the culture that fits it. You have to have the policies that fit it.
And the cost structure.
Which was a big deal because most of them
were unionized when Southwest wasn't.
Right. And so Southwest could get, their baggage people to, jump in and help out when it was needed. Yeah, Other airlines couldn't.
Yeah, or people who didn't do bags to help with the bags if they were falling behind.
Right.
The flight attendants to help clean up the plane. Yeah. To help put the seat belts.
Which that all gets limited.
Yeah, when you have a union.
When you have a union. Yeah. And so my point is, in bringing up the Southwest example as sort of the why you don't want to just stop at your near competitor, because that near competitor, it makes you feel safe going down that path. But there's actually just all these elements that are attached to this core that Southwest built organically that you can't just jump in and take a piece of it. The rest of your organization isn't built to line up to that. And so it feels safe to go with the competitor's route. But oftentimes, like that, you absolutely are not going to be able to pull that off. Whereas, there's going to be some adaptation as you go further out. Okay, like I have this problem. What industries are solving it? How are they solving it? How does that, like, there's just more thought because it's not a direct correlation to your business. There's more thought that goes into how does this fit? Does this actually fit a competency that we have? Does this actually supplement a competency that we have? Like, are we presenting like a whole package? I think you're more likely to do that analysis when you're going further out than just your competitive field.
Yeah, we all the time in our work in companies, we see organizations stuck with a problem, and then the first plausible solution that presents itself that passes a few kind of cognitive or mental checks, and this is most, for me, best articulated by, again, Richard Brummelt in his discussion on strategy, the idea that pops to your mind and you run it through a couple quick mental checks, and if it passes, you jump on it. And so that we have to be very careful of because we're busy. We have a lot going on. I'm Linda Resnick. I have a nut business. We've got these windbreakers and the fruits are just rotting. Why don't we make a juice? Yeah, that makes sense. We could do that. We know some bottlers. We know some, okay. And then you move on. And in that instance, then you make a juice. Well, it's another commodity. It's easy to be copied by anybody else who's going to build these bushes. Whereas I'm attributing in her thinking, she went further as you're recommending and said, let's not do a juice, let's do a health. And let's make it more difficult because now
they are pomegranate.
Yes. And there's not room for another juice where POM is. Now, what's happened since then is that smoothies have come in. And so Naked, the company Naked, hasn't tried to take the juice health, the healthy juice, I hate to call it juice, the healthy tonic that they're selling POM as, but they're right next to it in their own little bottles selling
health.
Yeah, smoothies or, whatever, raw with the pulp in it. And so
you get the fermented stuff
and so
too.
it's these are all different things there, but it's not another POM. It's not another POM competitor. And your point about Southwest is interesting for a lot of reasons, but the legacy airlines of which, there are three big ones in America today. This is 2026. We're filming this. There's American, Delta, and United are the three big legacy. And then there's Southwest, which is the fourth of the big four. Southwest for many years couldn't be copied easily. Mm-hmm. And then, so they had a great, amazing run up until around 9/11. And so they couldn't be copied for a variety of reasons, culture you mentioned, but the biggest one was the legacy airlines couldn't shed their union contracts and their high cost structure. And then 9/11 happened. And I don't know if they all went bankrupt, but of the legacy, at least two of the three went bankrupt. Southwest did not. I don't know if all three, but they went bankrupt. And in their bankruptcy, and were given support by the government to rebuild, they were able to shed a lot of these contracts. And then coming out of 9/11 with a leaner model, they begin experimenting with what they call basic fares, which are the stripped down. If you buy it, you're not getting points. You're going to have to pay for everything. You can't even bring an extra personal item on board. You can bring a personal, but you can't bring a roller. And that is what became Southwest's undoing, to where today, as we film this in 2026, I apologize to all the people who love Southwest, but I'm the top level status on Southwest. I fly them all the time.
They now look just like
the same.
The other airlines, yeah.
Because they lost over time. Now, they had it for a long time.
Right.
They had it for 25 or more years.
The change in January for the assigned seating, it was
just another airline.
The last, it's
and you have to pay for bags. And so
It's a little bit that the other airlines met them, and a little bit that Southwest stopped doing the things that they were distinctive on.
well, I don't think those are. I think
It's a little bit of both.
But I think the second part, yes, I agree. But the only reason Southwest stopped is because they were forced to. So for 25 years, your competitors can't catch up because their model is too heavy. And then all of a sudden, through the bankruptcy and everything I mentioned, they're able to catch up. And then their big insight was the basic tickets, the basic stripped down tickets that they were able to do on top of the leaner business model. That makes them Southwest. And then they actually take Southwest business.
Right. But that wasn't the only thing that made them Southwest. Southwest gave up the free bags and basically turned away from, like, a lot of their decisions were about how to make it so they were the best alternative to driving for business people.
I agree. And so, I mean, this is an important point about, strategy and not getting lock-in. That worked for Southwest for decades until it didn't. And then they had to be dragged kicking and screaming by activist investors on their board to make these changes.
Which I'm not sure are the best changes for Southwest.
The activist investors' point was you are now consistently losing market share and ground and occasionally money when you used to never lose money.
Right, but they now are a commodity. They're just like every other airline. There's no distinctiveness now.
Yeah, they got forced into that.
And which that could be a whole conversation about MBAs and hedge funds coming in and making everything the same in the drive. In the drive to maximize the money they make, they tend to, and I'm an MBA, so I can say this, in that narrow focus on money, you lose the soul of companies. You lose the distinctiveness.
Yeah. Strategy is very difficult. And so we can get back to the POM case because just as with Southwest, their strategy did not operate in a vacuum. And so there is a rest of the story to the pomegranate juice as well. And so if do you want to get into that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I think we can nail it down pretty fast. They basically found themselves in a lot of legal trouble because they made medical claims based on the science. Now, like, this is a difference between two people who, I don't know their backgrounds exactly, but I don't think they're scientists.
No, they're business people.
They're business people, marketers.
Very successful.
Very, very smart, obviously.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
like you and I, we have PhDs. We understand the scientific process and we understand a little bit,
It's hard. It takes forever.
But also like
Gotta
the
have a lot
culture of it
validation.
is that just because you have significant results, like, you're very careful about what you say about those results because there's all sorts of conditions that haven't been tested. There are all sorts of mediators that haven't been tested, like all sorts of different relationships that might actually change this thing entirely given a different situation.
Right.
And so you can't make a health claim
depending
broadly,
on how you do in your science. Right.
You can't make it broadly because what if this person with blood type O
or
doesn't react the same way, like, just as an example, and I haven't seen anything on pomegranate on blood types, but I'm just saying like the human body is so complex that all you can say is, given our research and the things that we tested,
this happened to these people.
Right. And they made claims because they're marketers and they don't understand the tentativeness of scientists. They made claims that were
more sweeping,
and they got in trouble for it. And they had to basically pull back some of the claims, which takes away some of their distinctiveness.
Yeah.
Now, did they really lose? So like they spent years making the claims
that basically pomegranate juice is good for you.
Right.
And we have some studies that prove that they funded.
That's right.
And they didn't hide that they funded them.
No, they didn't hide. They did it. They didn't do actually anything unethical. They just made claims that were too strong.
Yeah.
But because they had years of doing it, even though like the claims were too strong to really be
Yeah, they
held
probably
up
had
with science.
10 years of saying pomegranate juice is healthy.
You
Pomegranate
ask
juice.
anybody about pomegranate, they think POM,
Yep.
and they think it's healthy for me.
Yep.
Like anybody, you say, "Oh, I love pomegranate," and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, it's so good for you." And so they won. Like maybe they didn't intentionally like I don't think there was any malintent in their marketing, like leveraging the science that they had supported, and they did get in trouble for it. But the end result is it stuck. And you ask anybody on the sidewalk what they think about pomegranate, and even if they haven't tried it, they're probably going to tell you, "Oh, that's that healthy thing."
Yeah.
So they won.
It's over by the smoothies, or it's over by the...
Right. Well, and that's the second thing. They think you mentioned pomegranate. They know what it is, which nobody knew what a pomegranate was before these people started
and that it would make juice.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. If you've never seen a pomegranate, it's a seed with a very, very
tiny, like membrane.
Yeah, of juicy goodness, because pomegranate is really good. It's crazy this thing makes juice.
Yeah.
And I've tried to actually put it in smoothies, mistake people. Like the nut,
too seedy.
The seed part.
Can't get it out.
Yeah, the fat is awful. It ruins it. So like you actually need the juice if you're going to do that. That doesn't give you fiber. So, but it's very tasty in things like guacamole, which is like one of my favorite things.
Well,
with
the actual
seeds.
Yeah.
So yeah, they got in trouble. And so that leads to open the question, like, sometimes like you shouldn't go out and try to get yourself into trouble, but sometimes even when you haven't done things exactly correctly, like that narrative stays. Like they built a narrative and it's still there and basically supporting their distinctiveness, even though they've pulled back from it.
Yeah, it was a coherent action supporting their policy, their kind of strategic policy of we're going to make a category of health drink. And these studies help support that. And then again, whatever the years was, 8 years, 10 years, 12 years down the road, the FDA catches up and says, you can't do this. It's not healthy in the way that you claim. It's still a very high sugar drink and
all juice.
Yeah. And so you can't say these things. And that is not quite, I don't think, the defeat that it may have, like, let's bridge back briefly just to Southwest. You and I know Southwest is no different than the other airlines right now, as of today. We're towards the back end now of 2026. We know they're no different, but if you pull a person who doesn't fly that much, they may still think they're a little different. They may still think that they're, that company's more fun and they have a more, upbeat kind of culture or whatever. Yeah, they do things a little different there. And that perception may stay for a little while.
The difference is that once you actually get on the plane, you'll see.
Yeah, once you have to pay for, why am I having to pay $70 for 2 bags or whatever? I thought the bags were free, this kind of thing.
I think theirs unravels faster because it's visible and part of the experience versus.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because my mom and my aunt don't fly quite as much. They don't fly anywhere near as much as we do. But
nobody does.
When they fly, they don't usually fly out of the Southwest airport in Houston. They fly out of the
IH.
Yeah, the United airport. So they usually take in United flights. And so it's interesting, but I've offered a couple times, because I have a lot of the Southwest points as you do, I offered them flights and they would say, I don't want that because it's a free for all and you don't know what seat are you going to get.
Yeah, they don't like the uncertainty.
Right. And I tell them now they're just like another airline, which you and I have been using for the last 10 minutes as a pejorative, as a negative. But to my mom and my aunt, that's actually a positive, which is possibly what some of the MBAs were, I don't know, if they were hitting on that when they were forcing Southwest to make these changes. Yeah, I agree. Southwest has abandoned its previously successful competitive differentiator.
It's a commodity now.
In the airline business, people are extremely price sensitive, with the exception of the increasing number of people who chase the credit card points. I mean, we should do a whole podcast on the airlines, because I'm exaggerating now. So this is an exaggeration, but basically airlines, the big airlines, Delta, American, and United, they are credit card companies that happen to own planes.
That is true.
And the
Southwest has a credit card too.
I know, but I don't know that they are making anywhere near as much of their revenue in money. And then more recently, in this everything that's going on with the price of oil related to the war in the Middle East, it came to my attention that Delta owns an oil refinery.
Huh, I didn't know that.
And so, as you mentioned, Southwest had learned the lesson from 9/11 about the hedges for the price of fuel so that they didn't lose as much money, or I forget how they had it hedged, but they were okay. They had a lock-in.
I think they actually might have made money.
And so at some point, Delta realized there's a huge weakness in the American system for refineries, and so they bought one. And so Delta has been less impacted by the variations in the oil price in the last 6 months than the other airlines, because they literally own a refinery. And so they're interesting. These all, I think, circle back to a couple key points that you've made very well, which I would just kind of highlight. One being, managers are busy. There's a million things going on. Every day is a set of new challenges. So the tendency is to get locked in to the first plausible solution that passes a couple mental checks. And we say, that's what we'll do, and we move on. And that may be thinking too narrowly about the problem we face. And it's hard to prove a counterfactual, but that may prevent us from being something we could have been. And so Southwest now made these decisions to pay for bags and have people pay for seats. And so they became another airline. The question that we don't have the answer for is there something else they could have become after this, in this post discount carrier era, where now everybody's a discount carrier? What else could they have become? And they didn't do that. And so they're another airline at this point in time. So that's kind of the first thing, is trying to not take the first idea that gets you out of a hole and getting locked in on it. And then the second thing is that whatever your strategy is and whatever victory lap you're taking today, your strategy may work and give you a buffer and advantage for years even, but your competitors
are finding a way in. They're looking for a way in.
Why wouldn't they?
Right. And that's what she was using the science for, was to sort of build a wall around what they were doing to make it hard for anybody else to come in.
Yeah. They've been successful. Southwest is still a very good airline. I flew them yesterday. So, it's, how is Southwest going to be something besides just one of the big airlines that people pick the cheapest one or the most convenient schedule? But mostly it's the price.
Yeah.
People punish themselves more on the schedule than the price. And that's even business travelers, because most business travelers aren't buying their tickets. and the person buying their tickets is paying attention to the money. And so anyway, anything else you want to say about?
Well, and there's also, I think the last point is that there is pressure to comply with like the institutional standards. So like the standards within the industry. So that pressure is to become more and more and more like the competition. And you do have to make an effort to fight that.
Yeah.
You not only are you being pressured by like customer expectations, like for example, your mom and your aunt not wanting to fly Southwest because of the way the boarding and the seats.
Right. Used to be. Yeah.
Right? Because they do prefer the other method.
Yeah.
But it's also like, again, like this decision making that's happening. And part of fighting it is not stopping. You have to know what the competition is doing, sure. But you have to not stop there.
Yep.
You have to make an effort to go forward further out and run the analogies. And like we see that all the time in strategic planning. Like we basically force the people we're working with to stay in it longer and to generate more ideas because they all want to just stop on the first idea.